Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, January 29th, 2014 special meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mrs. Cropper.
Ms. Sanborn?
Yes.
Mr. Merchant?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Waldman?
Here.
Mrs. Brickman?
Present.
Public comments. We have two. The first one is Dr. Kelly Coles.
Well, I would prefer to go on the second one.
Okay. Rebecca Hancock.
Reebok.
Blizzard bag questions.
Yes. As the parent of 5 children in our district, I have a few questions in regards to the blizzard bags. What about parents that work outside the homes? What if we have 3 snow days? What if I have 5 children and they're all at different educational levels on how much time is required to be spent on each child? Who chooses the curriculum lessons and how does it reach the parents? What if there's no internet inside the child's home? We only have 1 computer for our children and we do not allow them to print without permission. Is the alternative just flash drives? What if a child goes to the babysitter? Are they supposed to do the packet with them? What if the parent doesn't speak English? How will these blizzard bags be graded? What if the child doesn't complete them from lack of resources? Did our district apply for the online application last fall? This is a wonderful thing if you're in my situation and you're a stay-at-home mom and a natural teacher. However, I feel that this could lead to so many problems in the education system. Will our testing scores go down? Are we going to be able to restore faith in our community if we continue to send work home? My children will never complete an assignment on YouTube from watching a video on any site or answering questions in regards to it. With that being said, I think we've done our turn as parents, and what if we have questions in the teaching material? How will they be graded if they're unable to complete the work when they're sent home? We're asking so much of our parents and our teachers in this district. Is there another example? This is another example of a way to distance education from parents. I'm confident in the staff at each of our children's school to teach these materials that they are given. This, in my opinion, blizzard bags would be infringing upon the parents' right to their time with their children and asking a lot of the staff to prepare extra papers and materials that may have never been used. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelly Coles, agenda item.
Wait for the next one.
Okay. Dr. Klein, Superintendent's business.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. I don't want to, and I don't think that our practice is going to be to approve or take action at meetings, special meetings such as this, work sessions. The intent behind work sessions are for us to learn and discuss and work through issues. That being said, we do have a timeliness issue with one particular item, and that is the blizzard bag. So I'd like to give you a little bit of information about that before the board considers approving a resolution to put those into place. As most folks know at this point, West Claremont has already utilized 6 of our calamity days thus far. The state currently allows districts to cancel up to 5 days of school for weather or other conditions or situations that may occur over the course of the year. The state law also requires us to designate 5 days on our calendar when it's adopted that could be used as makeup days. And in our case, West Claremont designated June 5th, 6th, 9th, 10th, and 11th as calamity makeup days should they be needed. Right now, as I mentioned, we're 1 over the limit as it sets with the state right now. While the governor has requested the legislature and Ohio Department of Education get together to review the possibility of providing additional calamity days to districts, we don't know when or what Columbus will actually approve over the course of the next several weeks. I did hear today that there are 2 separate bills in the legislature right now. One is suggesting that they give us 4 more days, one suggesting that we get 3 more days. So I'm not sure where that's going exactly or when that any kind of law would be approved. The current law states, and this was part of previous legislation, current law states that we may provide assignments, students' assignments that equal a day's worth of schoolwork and have it count as an additional makeup day. There are three pieces to the approval process. First, the local teachers union must agree and be on board with moving forward with this particular process, and they have done so. We've worked through some of the issues that pertain to the process and getting those blizzard bags put together. Secondly, the Board of Education must provide or pass a resolution saying that the plan is in place and that we are going to move forward with that. And if that happens, then the third piece is the resolution and the plan is sent to the Ohio Department of Education for their approval. There was, originally the law had these blizzard bag approvals, and the deadline for submitting them were August 1st. About a third of the districts in the state of Ohio did so and got their plans approved. But due to the extreme winter that we've been having, the Department of Education reopened that window and is now accepting additional applications or additional resolutions for consideration. Once those three steps are complete, if we choose to go that direction, any district in the state may start using blizzard bags as a way to make up a maximum of 3 days. You can't do that any more than on three occasions. The West Claremont plan, as we put it together and as we presented it to the board in a resolution this evening, includes our staff preparing lessons in advance that will be organized by grade level at the elementary school level and by building and teacher at the secondary level. In many cases, at this elementary level, we've taken our curriculum department has looked at putting lessons together and post those so that there's the teachers aren't really involved in the creation or the posting of that. Many of those things I'll review are connected to the series that we use right now in our classrooms. At the secondary level, it gets a little bit more complicated because kids take a variety of different courses. So each child's day looks different. They have different topics, different subjects that they're going to. And so those we're going to have to rely on our teachers to put something together around the assignments that those kids will be working on at that time. It could be as simple as looking at OAA or OGT sample questions and giving them some practice on those. It could be tied specifically to where they are in a given lesson, an assignment maybe that was going to be given that day that could be posted and used. Teachers have the opportunity to get a bit creative with that, but of course tying it back to the subject matter in their particular subject area. The lessons we're planning, if approved, we're planning that the lessons will be posted at our district website. So the morning of the snow day. So parents and students can go there, click on their grade level or click on their building, find their teachers and get their assignments. The law is very specific about students who don't have internet access at home. The law says that if that's the case and the student doesn't have access or cannot download information from the web on the given snow day, that the students will be provided hard copies of those assignments the day they return to school. In all cases, students have 2 weeks to complete those assignments and get them turned in. So it's not a matter of getting them done that day, they're due the next day. There's a 2-week window there. In many cases, it's advisable, of course, for the students to complete that work at that time, particularly if it's in the middle of a lesson or middle of a unit that a teacher's presenting. Beyond that, I firmly believe that nothing really replaces direct instruction. That's the best model that we've got. And quite honestly, I don't know that we'd be recommending the use of blizzard bags if we weren't in a situation like we're in this year where the weather has been so problematic. If the state legislature approves the addition of days, say takes us from 5 to 8 or 9, we would be more interested probably in using those days prior to kicking in blizzard bags, but we do need to have options. As I said, the ODE has opened the window briefly for us to approve blizzard bags if we choose to use them. And so that's one of the things we've got to do, take board action on a resolution now if we intend to use those. Because I asked the ODE directly how long that window of opportunity would be open, and they didn't give me a very direct answer. So my recommendation is that we put that into place and then we have that as an option should we get into a rough, should we continue to have a rough winter. It's a little frightening to me at this point knowing that we're not even to the end of January and we've already utilized 6 days, and we all know that February can be pretty nasty around Ohio. So hopefully we're done. We've had our last snow day and delay, but I'm not banking on it this winter the way things have gone. So with that being said, I would like to respectfully request that the Board of Education positively consider and approve the resolution to give us the option of using blizzard bags or calamity day alternative makeup plan for this school year.
You have heard the recommendation from Dr. Klein. I need a motion from the board.
Excuse me, I'll move that we adopt the resolution adopting a calamity day alternative makeup plan.
And a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Dr. Klein, why did not the previous board authorize the blizzard bags back in August?
Blizzard bags were relatively new. There were a lot of uncertainty about how they were going to be executed and what would make sense to do. And quite honestly, as we went into this new school year, we had a mountain of things that our folks were already doing. Teachers were loaded up with a lot of additional work getting the school year started. We had a lot of change going into this year with balancing staff and moving people, and we just felt at the time that was a bit problematic to add one more thing on prior to the August 1st deadline. And again, we don't even have we have to have done it at the end of last school year when we had teachers in place, so that we were ready to go and have it submitted by August 1st. Of course, we didn't see teachers until about 2/3 of the way through August.
Did you have conversation with the union, the teachers' union, to gain their support on this? And they were
Yeah.
completely supportive of it?
Yeah, actually, we have been working, and Joan Lewis and I have been working, and actually Ellie Preston as well, working on some more details about implementation, and we've got an agreement between the union and the administration. Here's how those things kind of roll out and deadlines for having assignments submitted and available online. Part of what if we go this route, I want to make sure that we have things posted online if a snow day does occur. So we've scheduled those things and given teachers, if the third one I think is due on February 14th, which is our PD day, so they'll be able to finish that third one up on that day if necessary. We tried to stretch it out and make it manageable for the teachers to be able to do that work.
Well, I have a couple other questions
Sure.
that you might be able to answer.
Okay.
Is there anybody that's vetting the information that's being presented to the children to make sure that it's age and grade appropriate? You would not want a sixth grader doing
Correct.
first grade work just to
Correct.
be busy, is it?
Correct. Yeah, actually, the curriculum department has gone through at the elementary level and taken things directly out of the resources that we use in the classroom now, so they'll be very grade appropriate. And literally, and we've started working on a mock-up of the actual page that'll be online. If you've got a first grader, you click on first grade and there's the assignment.
But
Same with
the
all the other
assignment will be
grades.
first grade driven?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's taken directly from that grade level's materials.
Got it. The other question I had was, what if the student gets partially through that assignment on the day that is a snow day? Is there resources available to them at that time? Or how do we do some follow-up to make sure that they get the resources they need to understand what they're actually doing?
A good question. We don't have folks available that day, but the students do have, as I said before, 2 weeks to complete the assignments, so they could bring that work in, and if they have a question, ask the teacher the next day or anytime during that 2-week period.
Is it under consideration that if multiple children, let's say 3 or 4, come in with the same question, having the same issue, is that something that they would be able to pull out and teach in the classroom setting so that everybody grasps that concept and they just don't go through the motions?
Right.
Okay. Perfect.
Any other questions or discussion?
The young lady brought up a whole boatload of questions, and many of which I'd, reading through this beforehand, I have. It's like 2 weeks to turn the work in. They should, I don't understand how that's gonna be anywhere other than just make busy work, how it's gonna be really a benefit to them, because if I'm working on something today, especially a first or second grader, if it's gonna be where it's not applicable for 2 weeks, then it's probably too advanced for them to handle right now. And if they do it now and it's not due for 2 weeks, how are you gonna fit that in there? I mean, you would basically need, and you've got how many different first grade teachers and how many second grade teachers,
Well,
40 or
right.
whatever you got, and it's like, to me, it just seems like make busy work rather than having something and then having 2 full weeks to get it done seems like an awful long time. And the problem with the people not having internet access and having it, having it handed out that way makes a real I don't know that we're just, it seems to me like it's trying to skirt a problem where that we need to, you know, if they're hurt, right now, we're not doing that great anyway, taking classroom instruction away from these kids because of bad weather. I think that's going against our purposes of education. It has to be more or less make busy work.
Well, let me-
And the teachers may be at different points and teaching things totally differently, so that, you know, the curriculum people really don't, unless they got with all the first grade teachers to design something, I don't see where that's gonna be really be beneficial to the kids. It's gonna be beneficial to the, you know, to everybody at the end of the year, while we don't have to make up a day or two, but really, educational purposes, it seems to be at odds with our aims here.
Well, I'll try to clarify a couple of things. First off, the assignments are designed by the teachers, and they are aware of the time frame. Many of the assignments may be either could be, I won't say will be, could be something that they've been working on that's a reinforcement for the learning that they've been doing. It could also be, in some cases, an extension activity that takes learning that they've done in the classroom that maybe we wouldn't be able to do because of time, and give those students an extension. I know one example was one of the music teachers and I were talking about, they don't have time necessarily to study all the composers they'd like, but the assignment could be around a composer with some questions that they needed to ask that they could bring back into the classroom. Beyond that, the state's very specific about making sure that we have, all kids can access those assignments as they can, whether they have internet access or not, and that's why the next day thing. There are probably going to be kids who, and maybe in the case of this particular mom that spoke, maybe kids that they can't pull them off. They may have internet access but can't pull them off that day. They get the assignment next day as well. We're not differentiating. I mean, everybody gets the assignment. If they can't do it on their own and pull it off, then they can do it. They'll get a copy of it the next day. The teachers, the curriculum department did start pulling things and putting blizzard bags together. We do have an instructional team that's working on, and they're going to be meeting here in the near future if we stop having cancellations. They're going to meet and go through and review all of those for the additional bags that we'll have. And remember, there's one assignment for all first graders district-wide. And because of the way we do instruction and because of the programs that we follow, teachers may not be exactly at the same point on every given day, but they're certainly covering similar material on every given day. So the combination of review material, extension material, all of us being pretty much in the same place at the same time by grade level, all of those factors play into the fact that it isn't busy work. It's work that either supplements or extends or helps kids review the information that they've been learning in their classroom.
In high school, you've got several language arts. Are those teachers on in the same general area, or they have leeway to teach it how they, I mean, are their lessons plans set up in advance by the school, or do they have to cover this material and it's up to the teachers to do their job?
Those teachers, and we may have, as a great example would be, we may have multiple teachers teaching chemistry, because that's a course that a lot of kids take, and et cetera. For the most part, they're going to be in the generally the same area. We want to give opportunities to teachers to be able to say the chemistry teachers can get together and create their packet for Blizzard Bag 2 and 3 as an example. We actually encourage that. It's going to be tied to the lesson or in the close proximity to where they are right now. And again, that classroom teacher at the secondary level is doing the assignment for their kids, the kids that they have in class currently. So if you go onto the website and click on Glen Estee High School, that'll take you to a list of teachers. You click on your teacher, and that assignment will be posted there by that teacher.
The teacher will do it, it's not every chemistry
Yeah.
teacher's going to have the same.
They may not
may
have the
have-
exact same assignment, but it may be that they do want to collaborate on it and put something up that all the chemistry kids are going to get at the same time. So we want to give the teachers enough leeway to be able to do that and to post what's appropriate for their class. And certainly, we always want to encourage collaboration amongst our teachers, particularly if they're teaching the same course, so that our kids are getting the similar kind of experience regardless of whose classroom they're in.
Would the alternative to this be the additional days on the end of the school year, which is not problematic for anywhere except for the financial aspect of things? That would cost additional revenues that we don't have currently in our budget, correct? I mean, this will mitigate some of those extra days being tacked
would.
on and. additional expenses
Yeah,
that we don't have
it
money
would.
for?
Yeah, it would. Putting a number, my finger on a number with that is a little bit of a challenge. Of course, we're dealing with winter months versus,
Sure.
at that point, what could be 100-degree days in Ohio. So it really depends, but we wouldn't have our facilities up and running in June.
Assuming that we were to vote favorably for this.
Yes.
As quickly as we voted favorably for this, if we went through this winter season and found it did not work for us, the students did not benefit from it, they did not get any educational gain from it.
Right.
As quickly as we put it into place, we could take it back.
You have to
correct?
do this every year.
Okay.
You would have to provide pass a resolution every year. And I want to remind the board too, that this year is the last year that we're counting days. Next year, we count hours. And so by extending our school day, which we're doing for next school year, we will have enough hours beyond that. I think that if I'm remembering off the top of my head now, but we have like 28 days beyond what the state minimum hours are. So we have 28 days worth of hours beyond what's required, the minimum requirement hours for our elementary kids next school year. So next year, even a 2-hour delay, right now, 2-hour days don't count against our calamity days. Next year, those 2-hour delays will count towards the hours that we've missed.
But we've padded our schedule well enough that we
Yes.
shouldn't find ourselves in a
Yes,
situation.
and that was part of
where we-
the purpose behind doing that, yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. And again, we may not need to use blizzard bags depending upon what Columbus does as far as extending additional days. But again, as I mentioned previously, ODE hasn't been very clear about how long the window to get this approved is going to be open. And so that's why, and like I said, I don't like to bring things that we have to vote on to special work session meetings. But in this case, if we're going to do it, I want to get it done so that we get the resolution to ODE for their approval prior to the window closing. If we get additional days from Columbus, we can push blizzard days back, or blizzard bag days back, and use the additional days that are given to us by the state. Again, I don't know when they're going to do that, though. It's hard for me to know.
But we're already one day over this year,
We are.
so if this is approved, you're gonna retro,
There are two things that we can do. If the state approves additional days, then our 6th day would be covered with those additional days. I did ask the state, and I did get an answer on this one because I had the same question. If the plan's approved by the board and the ODE approves the plan as well, we can then retroactively use one of those blizzard bag days to cover that 6th day. Whether we choose to do that or not is still up in the air, because if we've got a day, it's better to give the assignment the day that they're out, as opposed to giving it to them a week after the fact, to your earlier point. So we would have some options there, but at this point, I don't know and have no way of knowing whether the state's going to approve those additional days.
but if that was the case where you retroactively issued a blizzard bag, that could be done right in the school day with the teachers
could
there
be.
at hand, rather
Right.
than having people go to the web.
Absolutely, it could be, yeah, you're right.
Oh,
We haven't gotten to that bridge yet, so want to see what the state comes back with as far as extending any days, and then we can make that decision from there.
I mean, that way the teacher could say, this is a day's worth of work, and
Right,
with,
Right.
especially in the lower grades where they've got multiple subjects, and they
Sure.
can tie it all together with where they're at.
Especially if there's like a 3 or 4 day weekend, possibly,
Yeah.
to get it done. and
which we
squeezed in.
do, we have a 4-day weekend for students in the middle of
February.
February.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Mrs. Cropper?
Mr. Waldman,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Merchant,
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn.
Yes. Motion carried.
Before we get into the next segment, I do want to just mention to board members, I provided you tonight a memo from me regarding graduation dates for 2015. 2015, not this coming June, but the next May. We do have some choice remaining between, as to when we hold those graduations. Right now, we've got 3 possible dates: Friday, May 22nd at 7, Saturday, the 23rd at 10 a.m., and Saturday, the 23rd at 8 p.m. We did try to get ceremonies that were back-to-back, either morning and afternoon or afternoon and evening, so that we could make one big trip down to Centos, and that Saturday afternoon date was already taken. So right now, Those 3 dates and times are on hold at Cintas, but we need to let them know by Friday what our preference is so that we can get that locked down. We don't need to vote on that, but I would be interested after the meeting or tomorrow if each of you would give me your feedback on which dates you think makes the most sense, and then we'll get those scheduled with the Cintas Center. It's kind of hard to believe at this point we're talking about graduation in May of 2015, but you have to schedule those things that far out.
Did you take a look at whether or not we had families that had children in both buildings, meaning that, with the IB program being a specialized program at Amelia, do we have any families that have kids that would graduate the same year, maybe twins?
I would have to check that information.
Would you
I
mind
don't have
doing
it at hand.
that? I don't want to speak favorably about one day, morning and evening,
Sure.
if that was going to interfere with any family activities or,
Yeah, I can check that certainly. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'll be glad to check.
okay.
Any other questions about graduation? Okay. It will be here before we know it. I wanted to take a little bit of time tonight and introduce our guest speaker. After having spoken with Ms. Sanborn and Mr. Merchant in setting the agenda for this meeting, we suggested that maybe we have someone come in that is a board member himself and talk with us a little bit about roles and responsibilities as the senior leadership team of this district. Tonight, we'll begin that work as we develop our leadership and collaboration skills so that we are able to move the district forward in positive ways. I'm pleased to have Randy Smith with us tonight. I know he's got some background information about himself that he'll share in just a few minutes. He will speak with us about the roles and responsibilities of board members, the superintendent, the treasurer. And I thought it was important that we had a board member, a sitting board member, come in and talk about those things. That he's got real life experiences having been on a board and understanding how that is best to work efficiently. Randy's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but I guess my connection with Randy, and who I just met recently, is Randy is a band person, much like I was, and I think he was probably in the UC band the same time I was in the Miami band, which is probably more years than either one of us want to admit at this point. So I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Randy Smith, a board member from Forest Hills.
Thank you very
Randy.
much. Good evening. Had a chance to meet all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Hopefully, as I said earlier, I will have some value from my experience. And I titled this, What They Didn't Tell You About Being an Elected Official in a Local Board of Education. I know how I felt when I first was elected. First of all, after a competitive race, it's a little bit of euphoria that, hey, you made it. Okay, now what do I do? So what I'm trying to do this evening is provide some information that will help you be an effective board member, but also to keep you and your district legal. I will say up front, I'm not an attorney, but I am going to share some advice that does have to do with keeping you legal as we go through this. Here's a little bit of background on me. So just for full transparency, so you know where I'm coming from, because I have a particular point of view on certain issues, and I have a political slant on certain things, and you should know where I'm coming from. I've been on the Forest Hills Board of Education for 10 years. I am a 34-year employee with Procter & Gamble. And I spent most of my career in marketing, but I now work in a policy area, which is very appropriate for the policy-making group, the Board of Education. I also own and operate a very small real estate company, holding company. So I not only see it from the big picture, and I've been blessed to get some very good training from the world's largest advertiser, but I also see it from the very small point of view and the employees and the people that I work with, and quite frankly, I've got rental property, and so I do deal with people on a one-on-one basis and see people who have issues, financial issues, and are struggling to make it. I'm on the Hamilton County Republican Party Central Committee. I'm a precinct executive and a ward chair. I'm also the founder of the Forest Hills Education Foundation. I started that because I really believe in supporting education, but doing it in a way that doesn't always come from property tax money. So this was a way to do something different. I understand you have a foundation here, so that's a good thing. A few other activities here, and I did grow up in Anderson Township, and I now live in Newtown. Just real quick background, I suspect most of you already know most of this, but we're your neighbor to the west, suburban local school district, Anderson and Turpin High Schools. We have 7,500 students, which is about 1,000 less than you have. And I think, let's see, our 5-year forecast budget is about $73 million. Yours, even though you have more students than ours, I believe is somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 million?
65 million.
Okay. We're the 30th largest school district out of about 614, and I believe you're the 23rd?
23rd.
Okay. In the last time the state gave the official rankings, or not rankings, but ratings, we were excellent with distinction school districts, so we're fortunate in that area. My involvement with the board, I'm in my third term. I've been a board president. I'm on the policy committee. I'm the legislative liaison. Past OSBA state trustee. I don't always agree with everything OSBA says. They generally do a good job. It is a member-driven organization. My purpose for getting involved was I always felt like they were a little left-leaning, and so I felt like it would be a good thing to get involved and try and influence that group rather than stand on the sideline. I'm on their federal relations network. That's something that NSBA does to lobby our federal government in Washington, certain issues. You know, it's fairly easy to make change in the state, but it's a whole lot harder to move the needle on the federal level. And the other thing is, most of our funds are coming, at least I can speak for our school district, I think about 2/3 of our revenue comes from property tax, about 1/3 comes from the state, and a very small amount comes from federal. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but that little money, that little bit of money, there's a whole lot of strings attached to that money. But anyway, just quick background, personal beliefs. Yes, I do believe in fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free market. Hopefully you've seen those three principles before. I also believe that a free, quality public education, well, it's not a belief, it's a fact. That's a constitutional requirement in the state of Ohio. I mean, entitlements are not a constitutional mandate, but a public education is a constitutional mandate. I also truly believe that educated citizens are a big part of the reason why the USA is a great country, because we have a good quality public education and everybody has the opportunity to take advantage of that. For the presentation we're going to go through, the ground rules, ask any question. I'm happy to try and answer it. For the audience, I can't take your questions right now, but I'd be happy to talk with you after this is over. It's important to understand, this is my point of view. I'm not a trained professional trainer. I understand we have at least one in the audience here. My comments are my own, and to be very clear, it doesn't represent the Forest Hill School District, certainly doesn't represent Procter & Gamble. Right or wrong, it's a perspective of one member, and the only thing I can't do is share anything that's confidential to our school district. The Board of Education responsibilities, they're really fairly simple. They're basically 5, and it's not that complex. You set district policy. It's the what. We're going to talk about the how in a minute, but that's the what. You approve a budget. Manage the superintendent, manage the treasurer, approve contracts, and then I also put this other bullet here, other action required by law. There's a whole bunch of that, and you'll go through that during the year, things that you have to act on. Some you've got a choice on, most you don't. But anyway, that's really, those are your responsibilities. First things to do, learn, learn, learn. When I first got on the board, I had no idea what I didn't know. And I took advantage of some of the things. I've attended OSBA training. Again, I don't necessarily always agree with all of their points of view on all subjects, but they do provide quite a large menu of training opportunities. And some things like, we'll talk about the Sunshine Law. I mean, whoever gives the training, it doesn't really matter. The law is the law. You need to learn about it, and you need to find an opportunity to find a way to learn about it so you keep yourself out of trouble. What I would suggest is one-on-one with your superintendent. There's a whole lot of background information that you may be able to pick up there. Know your district areas of focus. That's essentially what the board in the past has given the direction to the district to go off and do. So that's something you need to be familiar with. I think at some point you'll probably have an opportunity to review those and influence and adjust and modify your areas of focus, but that's a key one. Another one is this is an important one, one-on-one with your treasurer. Review the 5-year forecast. You need to know that inside and out.
On Saturday morning.
Okay.
So sorry to interrupt this.
It's all right. I don't particularly like the 5-year forecast format coming from business. It's different, but it's what the state requires. And so your CFO has to do it that way. There's good information in there. I know I made my own spreadsheet based on the information in there so I can track and see how things are going. But that's a key document that you need to track and make sure you understand, and not just the expenditures, but also the revenue. Know how to find your district policies. That you're responsible for those. You need to get familiar with those. Do you have an online service? Okay.
Board docs.
Oh, okay. You need to make sure you know how to access those and get somewhat familiar with them. Do you also have well, if you use board docs, then they provide the updates? Okay. I know when I first got on our board, we had some attorneys helping us, but we didn't have a service. And I sit on our policy committee now, and we meet at least quarterly, and the number of policies we have to change because of either federal or state law is unbelievable. And if you don't keep up with those, you can get yourself in a bind, either with the state or federal, or quite frankly, if you're not keeping your policies up to date, and you can have a constituent take a look at what's going on. If you're not following it, you can wind up in court over that. So again, that's something you really, really want to make sure that the district is keeping you up to date on all the changes and making sure that you adjust your policies to make sure that you're in compliance.
I have some questions regarding that. Do you find yourself ever making up what policies you want to have, or do you generally follow Neola guidelines, or where do you get your source of information?
Excellent question. We use Neola, and so we take theirs where it's optional. Sometimes we will create, we have a lot of our own, like our student athletic policies. We've adjusted that considerably from where Neola is. But there are some of them, the attorneys will say, you don't have a choice on this one. It's the law. You must take it word for word this way. And therefore, you better do it. Because if you're not, the world doesn't end tomorrow. But usually where you can get in a bind is if you're not in compliance with state law and something goes wrong somewhere, especially if it affects a student, you might wind up in litigation over something that can be very costly to the school district. All because you didn't keep your policies up to date. Whatever money you spend on, like what we spend on Neola, is nothing compared to one lawsuit.
Yep.
So.
And what I would interject here is that we, like Forest Hills, we use Neola. That's the same group that we use to keep us up to speed on policy changes. Those usually come in about 2 waves, maybe 3 over the course of the year. And as former board or continuing board members remember, we had to spend about 3 or 4 meetings going through and approving those the last time, because out of the Senate Bill 5, no, I'm sorry, not Senate Bill 5, over the 59, the budget bill this past summer, there was a lot of legislation that was passed that caused us to have to go back and modify policies. So I think Mr. Waldman and Mr. Lewis are on the policy committee. Haven't gotten my latest stack of things for us to review, but once we do, we'll sit down, review all those, and then present them to the board for approval.
I think the nice thing about OSBA is they also provide that resource of policy. They do a quarterly policy update, and you can get a lot of information out of there and help balance with the other information coming from Neola. So it's great to have that second look.
And Mr. Smith is right. There are pieces that are we don't have a lot of choice on. This mirrors the language that's in the law, and we have to have our policies match that. There are opportunities in some policies where we can pick or fill some things in that are uniquely West Claremont. And once we get those, it'll become a little bit more apparent how that works. But I think we'll end up getting something later this spring, but will be our next update.
And Randy, you mentioned that you follow the laws, that you get new legislation and information. What source are you getting that information from?
Comes from Neola, and they'll usually tell us whether something's optional or not optional.
Okay.
Mandatory. Okay. So, and it's not just state; it's federal also.
Okay. Thank you.
Next thing on my to-do list for new school board members is meet with the school principals. You've got, what is it, 10 buildings here? 12, okay. Yeah. You may not be able to meet with all of them, but, I sat down with at least our high school principals, and, I let the superintendent know before I popped in on and we set up an appointment, but that's a good way to get a feel for what's going on. They need to know who you are. It's helpful for them to be able to share with you what's going on. That's a good way to just stay in touch. I had kids in school. Both my kids graduated from Turpin. I graduated from Anderson, so we had a little intra-family rivalry. But when you've got kids in, it's easier to stay informed. I don't now, and so I have to actually work at it to make sure I stay in touch with what's going on. And it sounds like 2 of you have already attended a new board member training class. I'd recommend that, but again, there are other ways to pick up the information. The next thing is to start to think about, what are your priorities for the year? What is it you want to accomplish? You ran for the board, you put a lot of effort into it. You must have a reason. So organize your thoughts on that. And when it comes time to your meeting to review the areas of focus, before I go into that meeting, I write mine down so that I'm very clear on, and I have them in my priority order of what I want the board to accomplish. That's not the superintendent's job list. It's not what I want the high schools to do. It's what I want my board to accomplish during the year. There's usually a limited amount that you can actually get done. And so, what's the priority? What is it you want done? Again, if your meeting is Saturday, if you haven't done it already, I'd go home and literally write it down, because when you have to write it down, that's what makes you really think through what's it going to be. The other thing is determine your area of interest. For most people, you can't be all things to all areas. I'll just tell you, I chose legislation, finance, and policy. That's the areas where I have an interest. I don't have an education background, so I didn't pick curriculum, but it's kind of, I don't want to say divide and conquer, that's not the right thing. It's divide and succeed. And I think you've already got board committees, right?
That's
so
committees established.
Okay.
But I would, if I could just, Randy, real quick, go back to one of the things that we had hoped to get accomplished tonight, we'll see how our time goes, is to start that prioritization process around what it is that the board wants to accomplish as we move forward. And Randy's point, I think, is an excellent one. We can have a pretty lengthy list, and my suspicion is it will be pretty lengthy, but we've got to be able to pick off things so that we can actually accomplish them and we're not chasing our tail all the time. If we don't get to start that process tonight, Mrs. Cropper has graciously given me some time on Saturday, so we can begin that process Saturday. But I love the recommendation you have, Randy, about everybody making a list of their top items before we get together to do that exercise.
Well, we have each board member puts them down in writing and gets them to the board president so that he can kind of get a feel for, what it looks like, and is there consensus? Are we all over the place? That kind of thing. It just makes it go a little bit faster. Yeah, new board member realities. And again, I'm thinking back to when I first joined the board. An individual board member can't change policy. It requires a majority vote. The other thing is, we started to talk about this a few minutes ago, federal and state mandates, unbelievable. That dictates many policies. I just couldn't believe the amount of red tape and requirements there were for a Board of Education. I thought, I know what's best for my board. I went to 12 years of school there. My kids go there. I know what's right. And you get in and realize it's not that simple. There's a lot more to it. It's the legal aspect and the practical point of it, and quite frankly, collective bargaining. There are a lot of things you can't just go decide to do. Another thing is the superintendent and treasurer don't report to individual board members. They report to the board. That's the legal entity that they report to. It's also, it took me a little while to get the feeling of what the difference between making policy and making administrative decisions. The board is responsible for setting the policy. It's up to the district to take that policy, figure out what the administrative guidelines are, and they act based on that. Well, I had an example in my mind, and I forgot what it was now, but the difference between making a policy and making an administrative decision. You might decide discipline. Here's our policy on discipline, but it's an administrative decision to decide whether a student violated that and should be suspended or not. I mean, that's a little bit the difference between policy and administrative decisions. We already talked a little bit about making sure your policies are up to date. Again, can't emphasize that enough. Why so many laws to regulate school districts? Now, this is my point of view strictly. And like I said, it took me a couple of years to kind of grasp what was really going on here. But it seemed like every time a school district or Board of Education screwed up somewhere in the state of Ohio, up in Columbus, they decide to pass a law because they know better than we do, so they're going to fix it, and they're going to require a certain thing. Well, you've got this patchwork of laws, and like I said, every time somebody makes a mistake somewhere, more and more laws, and so what I would call it the bandwidth that a Board of Education can operating in gets squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Same with CFOs, I've noticed. But it seems like there are a lot of things that I just couldn't believe coming from business. Why wasn't our school district doing this with the money that we're sitting on? Because you know, a lot of people don't understand how school funding works, because in a levy cycle, you're taking in more money in the first few years, and you're actually sitting on money, and it makes it look like you're flush, and you know, why do you need this levy? Well, in the latter years of a levy cycle, obviously, you probably are deficit spending. You're spending down that you took in up front as expenses go up. But couldn't understand why, and when I sat down with our CFO, explained how many things we can't do. Now, in some ways it's good because it limits risk. I'm sure some school board somewhere took some risk that they shouldn't have, lost money, legislature got wind of this and said, aha, we know better, we'll fix this. We're going to pass a law that says, here's what you can't do. So as a result of it, what we can do, what your CFO can do is very limited, but it is very conservative. And since you're dealing with taxpayer money, that's probably not all bad. But again, there's some things that seems like, I know our CFO, I think, could manage certain things, but he can't do it because that's just the way it goes. Oh, here's another one. Significant amount of spending is controlled or required by federal or state law. When you get to Title I, IDEA, I'm not sure how much, No Child Left Behind, but especially the things with special needs students. And the tricky thing is, they don't always say, you must spend the money on this, but they have a mandated outcome. And so if you don't spend the money on that, the outcome won't be there. And the amount of money, and again, I'm not familiar with your budget, but the amount of money you get from the federal government as a percent of your overall budget, I'm going to guess is...
We get 8 million on an 85 million total budget.
That's bigger than I thought it was going to be, but it's still, overall, it's not that big. But the amount of money, I know our numbers, the amount of money we get from the federal government, and compared with the amount of money that we must spend because of those laws, it's about 4 times more than we get from them. And it's, you know, and again, just to be absolutely clear, we're all about students. That's why we're here. I have nothing against special needs students. We want to provide the best that we can for special needs students. But the point is, there are so many things that are mandated, and the amount of money that we have to spend is so much greater than what we get from the federal government that it's one of those rock and a hard places, because you can't not do it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that Title I money and the other money that's allocated on that line item has to be spent for that purpose. You can't use Title I money for busing or for other
Correct, and it's used...
expenditures.
The state and federal money is meant to supplement, not supplant general fund money. So there's what they call maintenance of effort, which means that you are required to continue to spend what you've been spending in your general fund. They want to send you money that's going to improve, enhance what you're doing for certain types of students, not to take that money and replace it and use it to fund what you're already doing, programs and services that you already have in place. So it's meant to supplement, not to supplant. And there is a maintenance of effort that they calculate every year. If we don't continue to meet that maintenance of effort, they will take some of the federal money away.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
There are other things in state law, for example, transportation. There are minimums, and you can't cut below that. You don't have the authority to do that. I'm trying to think some other areas like that. Well, special needs is a big one.
Transportation.
I'm sure is there any safety or security, but anyway, the point is, there are a lot of things that you don't have the authority to cut it, even though it's your budget. Go ahead.
Sorry, but I think when we go through our appropriations, that's one of the things that I try to point out is to show you how much is in salaries and benefits, which is totally mandated by current contracts. And then we get into our contractual services, and that's about salaries and wages take up about 72%. We have another 20% of our budget is in contractual services. Those are all mandated by state and federal laws. Transportation, we're at state minimum, as Randy just spoke. A lot of our special ed contracts are in the contracted services. So we're at 92% of our budget before we even think about the materials and supplies that we want to spend. Take it to 93 when you take out what the county takes out of our budget to collect the property taxes. And then add utilities, you're at 95. There's very little bit of the budget that is truly discretionary spending.
Moving on, next thing I want to talk about are constituencies. And this is where I differ a little bit from some of my peers elsewhere in the state, and especially in Columbus. A lot of times they'll say, we have to do what's right for students. And I agree with that, but that's not all. You have to do what's right for students and parents. You can't forget about teachers and your other employees. I know at P&G, you have to do right by your employees or your business will fail. CEOs, time and time again. Do you have anybody P&G employees in the audience? Nope, okay. Anyway, the CEO will time and time say the most important asset we have, it's not our facilities, it's not our plants, it's not even our brands, it's our people. And if you don't take care of your people, in the long run, you will fail. I have my small business. I'm very aware of that. If I don't take care of the people who are working for me, I am in deep trouble, and the impact is very quick. So you have to take care of your employees. The third one is taxpayers. You have to do what's right for taxpayers because, again, what percent of your budget comes from property tax?
About 53%.
Okay, big part of your budget. And don't forget that the rest of the state money is also coming from taxpayers. So you've got to do right by them. And also your community. You've got to do right by your community because if you don't, you could, to me, something that's out of balance is if you made all your decisions just for students. That would mean taxes might go through the roof, and it's going to cause some major problems for your community.
Can I ask you a question on that? When you have, or you're presented with an issue that you're now making a decision on, is that the pecking order, if you will, on what you put in your foremind going through? Who's this going to benefit? Who's?
No order, because to me it's a balance.
Okay.
It's got to work for everybody. If it doesn't work for somebody, over time, something bad is going to happen. You're going to get out of balance. It's not all going to work. Let me just talk about the community partnership. You got to maintain a quality school system to maintain property values. I'm keenly aware of that over in Forest Hills because I own quite a number of houses over there. And you know, it's a balance between the taxes that I'm paying over in Anderson Township or Village of Newtown and the value of the houses that I have there, and quite frankly, the rent that I can get for them. You can be sure when I'm renting a house over there, the second thing there says Forest Hill Schools, because that is an asset for me in my business. There has to be a balance. I hate to use somebody as an example, especially somebody so near to Cincinnati, but Little Miami School District. That's a situation where, for whatever reason, the support wasn't there for the school district. And you can make short-term decisions that might look good for your property taxpayers by not putting a bond issue on or not putting an operating levy on. But if you do that long enough, eventually, you're going to undermine the overall value of the school district. And you'll get in a situation like they're in now. I don't know if anybody knows anybody there, but try and sell a house in Little Miami. I personally know people who've got property there, and they're not going to give it away. And so they're sitting on it because, and it's probably not solely, but primarily because of the condition of the school district there. So it's a balance. You can make short-term decisions that look good, but you really got to think about the long term. To me, it's when a bridge fails, it fails all at once. The bridge goes into the river. You know something happened. But a school district doesn't fail that way. It's one student at a time. And over time, that's, you know, and that's not visible. It's not dramatic like when a bridge falls in. It's hard to measure, although the state thinks they can measure everything. But anyway, you know, it's hard to measure. But anyway, that's just, I want to point that out because it's important to think long-term, and there are consequences if you just think short-term. That's my opinion.
So when you're basically stating community responsibility, we're talking about the ability to put additional levies on or put other things on that the taxpayers have continually rejected? How does that, what's the ethos? What is the return on our investment there? I mean, what, the people in the community are saying no, yet there's an effort to try to increase the quality of our education, the busing, you know, the music programs, these things we've had to cut because of the lack of funds.
The burden is on you to come up with the plan and the formula that optimizes.
The 5% of the budget that we have control over.
Well, no, actually, that's not right. Well, yeah, but I meant, big picture. Overall, the burden is on you guys, the 7 of you, to come up with a plan that works for the community, but also works for the district. We failed well, it was a bond issue not too long ago because we didn't have a good plan. The community said, we're going to come up with a different plan, hopefully. One that the community will support. The burden is on us to the creativity, you know, whatever it's going to take to go off and do the research, to understand where our community really is. We'll talk about that in a minute. But to come up with a plan that is the balance so that you can get the majority of your community to support it and it works for the school district. It's not easy. If it was easy, anybody could do it, but the burden is on you guys to come up with that. And if you fail, again, I hate to, Forrest, I hope you won't use this example in anything, but you know, Little Miami is an unfortunate, a good example of what happens when the board continues to fail to come up with a plan that works for both the community and the district. Anyway.
Unfortunately, it is. And you can have one street, the houses are built on both sides of the street at the same time and see a valuation based on the district that those sit in differing by 20 to 25,000.
It's interesting you could say that because one of the levies that we ran, not this past one, the one before that, we did some comparisons, and there was one example, and I don't have the exact data, so I'm not going to try and give the exact numbers, but we found a house model, a design built by the same builder, was about a quarter mile, they were about a quarter mile apart. One was in one school district, one was in another, and Well, there were some other differences, but the primary difference was the school district. And I think it was a 23% difference in property value. And again, it was not the only factor, but one of the primary factors that was attributed was the quality of the school district. So that's real, and that's real money in people's
Oh, it is.
pocket. But
Yep.
again, it's short-term versus long-term. You're paying your property taxes every 6 months. You only sell your house once, but anyway. Roles and responsibilities. Boards govern. You oversee. Superintendents administer. The policies you put in place, these folks have got to set up guidelines to essentially make the policies work. And you need to think about it. Your superintendent's basically the CEO of a $65 million corporation. The treasurer is a CFO of a $65 million corporation. The Board of Education acts as the board of directors to oversee this corporation. I'm not sure how familiar anybody is here of what the real role of when you sit on a board of directors. Procter & Gamble has a board of directors. They don't run our business, but they oversee and make sure they're the liaison to the stockholders to make sure that Procter & Gamble is making good use of the money and hopefully doing the right thing. I'd like to think P&G's got a pretty good record and reputation of doing the right thing. We've been fairly successful. But the point is, we have a board of directors, and that's their job. This gets into a little bit of the difference. This is actually one for the superintendent. How to think about what the roles are. When you think about what's the focus here, the school board should be focused on what are the end results. It's the superintendent's job. What are the means? How do we get there? You guys should be setting the objective. It's up to the superintendent to figure out, okay, how do I deliver that objective? An example might be if you guys feel that graduation rate is really, really important, and all your focus is going to be on that. So you're saying our objective is to increase the graduation rate here. The measure, obviously, is graduation rate, and you might say, I want to take it from a 90 to a 95. I have no idea what it is here. But that's the measure, and the goal is from 90 to 95, the measure is graduation rate. But again, it's up to these folks to figure out what's the strategy, how am I going to get there? What am I going to have to do? What am I have to change in the way I manage this company so that we deliver a better graduation rate? The type of questions to ask for the school board are, what, why, how much, how well. The superintendent needs to figure out how, when will we execute this, where, who's going to execute it on his team. Some of the tools, again, this is getting a little bit detailed, but it's up to the board to set the mission. What are the goals? What are the policies that deliver those goals? Those type of things, strategies, procedures, regulations. Again, that's up to the superintendent to figure out. You can influence that, participate in the discussion, but that's basically the superintendent's responsibility. The methods, it's very simple. The board votes. The superintendent his role is to make recommendations to the board on which you will vote. Okay, this is a little bit of an eye chart, but I wanted to share it with you. I think you guys have got a hard copy here so you can actually read it. This is a little bit more detail of what board member responsibilities are. I mean, some of them are obvious, obey the law. That doesn't always happen. Recognize the confidentiality of privileged information. You will get into your possession privileged information, confidential information. For example, you've got to make sure that you don't share information about minors if it does come into your possession. So there are a lot of things you need to think about, especially when you're sharing information that you got as a result of being a board member. Establishing effective board policies, that's fundamental. Delegate authority to the administration to make things happen. Again, that's part of your job. Moving down, a couple key important ones are Decisions based on available facts and your judgment. That's what you're, I almost said paid for, but we don't get paid, but just in case the audience doesn't realize that. I got to tell you a quick story. One of the first times we had a operating levy on, there was a letter to the editor from somebody in our community who said, I think the first thing that should happen is the Board of Education should take, I can't remember what they said now, 50% pay cut or something like that, not realizing that other than a stipend for meeting expenses, there is no salary for Board of Education. Anyway, let's see here. I assume you guys have to sign the same forms that we do about conflict of interest. If you haven't got that yet, you will.
You signed those for the auditors. That's at the end of the annual financial audit, so. Next year before the 3 new board members signed, but the 2 experienced board members just signed them.
You know, refrain from using board position for benefit of myself, family members, or business associates. That's not just a recommendation, that's the law. You have to be careful about that. Here's another one. Be a good listener. Seek opinions on both sides of an issue before you vote, because on most issues, there's more than one side. And you're not going to please everybody all the time. You made a decision this evening that probably not all your constituents are in favor of. But you had to look at the facts. Hopefully you had a chance to know that this was coming, so you had the opportunity to do some of your own research. And you made a decision which hopefully you thought was in the best interest of the school district. Here's another important one. Careful what you say in public. You all can stop listening out there now. This is a classic. You're going to get people to catch you at the gas station, a grocery store, whatever, and ask you about a certain thing, especially if they've got passion over a certain topic. And you have to be careful what you say, because I know I've said something like this, well, I'll look into that. Well, that's what I said. But what they heard is, I'll take care of that. And you got to remember, as a single board member, you probably are not in a position to be able to take care of that. So again, this is just something to think about now that you're an elected official. Another one is, I started talking about this a minute ago, actions that will get you into legal trouble. Confidential information, or again, information about minors. Another thing to think about is, it's okay to give your own opinion on something, but be careful not to speak on behalf of the board unless you have decided on something and it is the will of the board, and you're sure that that is the position of the board. On our board, we delegate to the president to speak for the board and the superintendent to speak for the district. Forrest probably knows that when he calls us up, a lot of times we'll say, well, have you talked to the president? Because they're the ones that we've informally decided that they should be speaking on behalf of the board. Oh, Sunshine Law. You guys hopefully have heard this before. But there are a couple key points in the Sunshine Law you need to be aware of. In general, and I put that in there because I'm not an attorney, I can't give legal advice. It's illegal for 3 board members to meet to discuss school issues. You can't do that. And it may be illegal to have a chain meeting to decide something, meaning one calls the next one and says, okay, what do you think? I'm going to vote this way, to call the next one. I think it was the Cincinnati Enquirer. There's a state case on that where they went after Cincinnati public schools that's where they were trying to operate, and big legal trouble, cost them a lot of money. So you don't want to do that. This is your opportunity to speak when you meet. You're only a board when you're in official session, whether it's a work session or whatever. That's your opportunity to deliberate. Another part of the Sunshine Law you need to be aware of, emails, correspondence, communication, could be subject to a public record request. And are you guys familiar with public record requests where anybody can, okay, don't forget that any email you send is subject to that. Now, the only exception to that is if you are talking or communicating with the official attorney, not any attorney, but it's got to be the attorney representing your school district. You can have privileged communication. When your attorney sends you something, if it's privileged, it'll say that up there. You have to be careful not to forward that on to somebody else because then it loses privilege. Again, I'm not an attorney. You need to have a chat with your whatever legal counsel you have represents the school district because whatever they say goes because they're the ones who have to defend you in case you get into an issue. And I'll admit that it wasn't sunshine law issue. Well, actually, it bordered on a sunshine law issue. We've had some legal challenges in Forest Hill School District, and it's cost us a bunch of money over the years, either in money for attorneys to defend our action, and in some cases, if you are on the short end of the stick, you may wind up having to pay attorney's fees for whoever is filing the action against you. So that stuff's all very serious. And I know when we get into executive session sometimes, we've got 2 attorneys on our board, and so they keep us pretty much squeaky clean. But when you get into executive session, you've got to remember that you can only talk about the things that were approved in the motion when you went into executive session. It's very easy to get off the track a little bit and start having a discussion about another topic or something that's not covered under the executive session. Be careful not to do that. That is, or could be interpreted as illegal.
And how do you avoid those those discussions? If you get in there and then somebody goes off, I mean, how do you skirt we need to go back out into public comment to avoid that? How do you make that happen?
The president or whoever is in charge of the discussion needs to steer the discussion and make sure you stay on track. And if somebody gets off, any one of you, the 7 of you, should
Call them out on it?
Call it out, yeah, because you don't want to go there. And public record, this gets back to the public records request. This is just about anything that's tangible that's in the district office. Emails, like I said before. Trying to think what else. Anything you guys want to add just as far as, okay.
Emails, public records, a lot of times the public records requests do have to be specific because occasionally I'll get a public records request for the books. And there really are no books anymore. It's all online, and I could print out 5,000 pages of information. So there is a part to the public records request that it does have to be identifiable and succinct. So, but we do get quite a few requests for financial documents here.
Now, when you say emails, is that your personal emails as well as your West Claremont email?
If it went to one of these folks in your capacity, then it counts.
Yep.
What if it's amongst us in personal email? Let's say the 3 of them want to communicate on an email.
I think the answer is it depends. Anytime you do reply all, that's a yellow flag right away because that's a pseudo meeting. Email from one to the other, maybe. Again, at this point, I'm going to stop because you're asking legal questions and I'm not an attorney. So you need to get that answered by your legal counsel.
Legal counsel to answer that question.
It would be safe to consider any email between us be public record.
I would agree.
Again, you get that from your attorney, but typically that's what I've been trained on, so. Okay, we're rounding third and heading for home here, folks. Keys to good relationship with the superintendent and treasurer. You're going to have to build trust. Trust doesn't happen overnight, but that's something with a good working relationship. Everybody here, presumably, is trying to do the right thing for your constituencies. And the reason I said constituencies instead of just students is, like I said, it's more than just students. Don't get me wrong. I haven't put 10 years into this and participate in all these other activities and here tonight if it wasn't for the fact that I believe in public education and what's right for students. But as I said earlier, it's that balance. So the belief that you're all trying to do the right thing for your constituencies. Balance. You've got to make sure that both sides of whatever the issue is, whatever the organization is receiving some consideration. Communications. We'd like to think there wouldn't be surprises in a public meeting. pardon me, we call it no gotchas, by bringing up something that the superintendent isn't ready for, or a superintendent bringing up something that you guys have had no chance to plan for or, you know, get some background on. Respect. Like I said, this doesn't happen overnight. It's earned. Work toward a positive, transparent relationship. Sometimes you'll have to agree to disagree. That's going to happen within this group. Rarely do you have a board that agrees on every issue. And, you know, if you respect each other, if you've got a 3-2 vote, 4-1, that's the way it goes. But whoever's on the short end of the stick, once the vote's taken, you know, you got to move on. Your level of communication with both your CEO and CFO. How often do you communicate? You know, this is something where maybe in some kind of work session, you guys need to talk this out. What level of information do you need? Is it every little thing? Probably not. But if there are events that truly impact the Board of Education, you guys need to figure out a way to get that out. In our district, our president meets with the superintendent every week or every other week, and then we get a one-way conversation. That wouldn't be a conversation, would it? It's a one-way communication from the president on, hey, here are the hot topics, things that you need to know that are going on. And you guys need to work out a comfortable, you know, how often is it? Once a month, once a week? You know, it depends. And is it face-to-face, email, written? Again, that's stuff you guys need to work out. One thing that I know I always like to say is, I don't like to say, I don't know, when I'm at the local soccer game and somebody comes up and says, tell me about this issue. If it's an issue that impacts the school district, I would hope that I have been prompted to at least know the background, so I don't have to say, duh, what are you talking about? So again, but that's part of you guys doing your homework, and you're probably going to get a mountain of paperwork on a fairly regular basis. And the challenge is to figure out, what do you have to read word for word, and how much do you really have to go through, and how am I going to get information and stay informed on what's going on in the school district. Another important area is providing data, for example, via surveys on the mood of the community or in various constituencies to help you make a decision. I know that I have a certain group of people that I know and different organizations that I attend, and so I think I've got a read on the community. But the reality is, I don't have a truly big picture read on our entire community. There are a lot of different constituencies within our community. In Forest Hills, I think we have about 20% of our households have students in a Forest Hills School District school. We've got another, I forget what the percentage is, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 2-3% that are attending school but going to non-Forest Hills School District schools. Then we've got a potload of other people that don't have, I would fall on this now because my kids are out of school, that are not directly connected with the school district. Now, they may have been in the past, and again, I had the numbers for that and I've forgotten it. We know what percent of our population has had a relationship with Forest Hills School District. We've got empty nesters. We have some people who never had. And so the challenge is, how do you, we were talking about the plans before to come up with what's that balance, what's the, whether it's facilities or operating or budget, whatever it is, to stay in that, the sweet spot where the community as a whole, all those different groups are comfortable and supportive of what you're doing, because they're paying property taxes. You know, they may not feel good about it. I just had to write my check, you know, a couple of weeks ago. I didn't feel good about writing that check. But, you know, overall, do I feel good about that my property value has maintained and grown, that type of thing. So the point I'm trying to make here on this one is, I challenge you to make sure that you reach out beyond your circle of friends to make sure that you get a broad spectrum and understanding of where your community is. I personally like to do that. Being a P&G person, data is very valuable to me through surveys. And I think I put in here a statistically significant read. In other words, it's got to be large enough so that you're really getting a read on your community. And also, when you do surveys, if you employ somebody who's a professional, they'll know how to do it. But to make sure that you're not just talking to, for example, parents who've got kids in the school district. That's not representative. You might want to know what that group thinks, but you need to go beyond that. Okay, here's another laundry list. The board should expect that the superintendent, some of these are pretty obvious, operate in a fair, open, and ethical manner at all times, work with you on an equal basis, strictly enforce the policies that you guys set, keep the board informed. Let's see, there are a couple other key ones I wanted to hit. Oh, support board decisions. You guys may agree to disagree on something, but if the board votes a certain way, as a professional, it's your job to carry that out. Let's see, some of these are obvious. Set the agenda. Respect confidentiality. Oh, here's another one. Continue professional development. Be a member of professional organizations. To me, that's key. I want my superintendent to be on the cutting edge of things. And if you just stay in Claremont County and never leave, it's probably unlikely that you're going to stay on the cutting edge of what's going on, especially with what's happening in education in Ohio and this country at this point. So now, the superintendent should expect that the board will act in an ethical manner, furnish objective counsel and advice, support the superintendent as long as the superintendent carries out board policy in a professional manner. A couple other key ones in here. I mentioned keep current with education trends. Let's see. Respect confidentiality. Those are, again, some of them are kind of obvious. Here's one for the CFO. A board should expect that the treasurer will function as the CFO, provide fiscally sound reporting and reporting, follow board policy regarding spending, make recommendations to the district about finances, and keep the district efficient and effective. I look to my treasurer to come up with ideas for their cost saving. That's your job. You deal with that day in and day out. I know that our treasurer has come up with some things that, that I'm not a finance person, that I would never thought of. And it's been very productive. And I know you talk with our treasurer, so that's a good thing.
Treasurers do tend to talk, so, and that's the good thing about being in the school sector. It's not in a competitive nature. We do all network and talk, and that goes to the importance of the professional development that you're talking about, and having that time to learn from the presenter, as well learn from your fellow treasurers that are attending the meeting. So I have found that very valuable.
Another important one, good state audits. You just had a state audit?
We did, and they all know I like to brag about that, so they're going to think I planted you to say that. But we did just have our state audit, and it did not have any deficiencies in it. As a matter of fact, there was
No management
comments
letter?
for
That's very good.
Nothing.
That's impressive.
And one of the things I did notice about that audit was that I would say a third of the written material that was produced by that audit basically stated that the auditors had an arm's length transaction involved in the process and didn't want to be held accountable or something. It was amazing how they kept it out there away from
That's
themselves.
standard, though. I mean, that's just,
That's a lot of verbiage.
well, they're limiting their liability, but anyway.
Yeah.
And the other thing is especially, I shouldn't say especially, it's important for both, but the professional development and the professional organizations. But so many things change so rapidly that if you're not doing that, you're going to fall behind. Now, this is a P&G-ism, but I wanted to share it with you anyway. We deal with OGSMs all the time. It's what's the objective? In other words, what's the desired outcome? That's what you guys are responsible for. The strategy is how you'll deliver the objective. Any project that I work on, my management is going to expect some kind of an OGSM statement. What's the unit of measure that you'll use? I gave the example of if the objective was increasing graduation rate. The strategy is up to the superintendent to figure out how to do it. You've charged him, increase our graduation rate. He's got to figure out how to do it. The unit of measure is, I guess it's number of students that would be graduating. And the goals, it would be the number that you said. If you're at 90 now, like I said earlier, 95, that's the goal. Anytime you're dealing with a project, you get what you measure. And if you can write it down, clearly articulate it, you have much better chance of getting what you want in the end. That assumes that the board all agrees to whatever the project is you're talking about. But I'm a big believer in putting it in writing, and you get what you measure. So anyway, and my experience when I first got on the board, the education culture is very different than the business culture. And where I work, everything's in writing. And it'd be in, if I send a memo to somebody and ask for input, if they don't give me some constructive criticism, it's like, it's an insult because they didn't read it. Education community, it seems like when I'd send something up, they were all afraid to make some comments on it because I was the board member. And they didn't want to upset or offend the board member. And so it took me a while to figure out the difference in the two cultures. One of your other jobs is going to be to evaluate the superintendent. Ohio just went through a process, and I know ODE went through a process, and they've got a fairly good framework, template for how to go through a evaluation that I would suggest that you think about it, make sure you've got a time at some point in the year when you're going to go through this. But the reason I mention it now is you need to be thinking about that now and get familiar with this so that you're recording and remembering things so that when it comes time to the evaluation, you can give quality input and base it on real world interaction and what your superintendent's done. Effective boards. I'm going to kind of skip through some of this, but an effective board, and this is based on a lot of boards over a lot of years. If you commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement, and this is where I think it's very important, define clear goals toward that vision, you will be more effective than if you don't approach it in this organized manner. Effective school boards have strong shared beliefs and values about what's possible for students. Let's see. This is one I absolutely believe in. Effective boards are accountability driven. You spend less time on operational issues that are really their problem and more time focusing on policies to improve student achievement. And I would say not just student achievement, but efficient student achievement. That gets back to the money because I absolutely believe in that we've gone through some of this. It's that balance. So efficient student achievement. Collaborative relationship. You want to see these folks succeed. They want to see you succeed. As long as you're all trying to win, I think about it as competing with other school districts. Probably shouldn't think about it that way, but that's what I do because we're all on a team, and we're going to sink or swim based on how well this team works together. This is one I like, data savvy. Data-based decisions are usually going to be more effective in the long run than if you didn't do your homework and you shoot from the hip. Just 2 cents worth from somebody who spent 35 years at P&G. Again, it's teamwork. Lead as a unified team, collaboration and mutual trust. I'm a believer in committees because you can't do it all. And you have 3 committees now, and you might want to set up some others. I know we're looking at curriculum. So you have facilities in policy and finance. Those are important ones to have. And also, don't forget, and as it says here, the sunshine on committees. When a committee meets, even if it's less than 3 board members, sunshine law still applies. You've got to announce it and do all that rigmarole, but it's still the right thing to do. Okay, looking forward. Ohio is going through transition. I really think there hasn't been much change in public education in 40 years. And I think some of that has to do with collective bargaining. My personal opinion is that some of the unintended results of collective bargaining have kept public schools from
Succeeding.
I won't say making progress, I'll say making change. And I think that we're going into, this is my opinion again, we're going into a period where there is going to be more likely, people are going to be more receptive to change. Because there are a lot of things that are changing, whether it's Columbus or education in general, or just the way students learn. I mean, just think of what the internet's done. So now is an opportunity to take advantage of this opportunity for change. And what do you think is going to be valuable? What change is going to be helpful for West Claremont? You guys are on this board at what I would think is somewhat of a unique period in time. So that's just a kind of a challenge and something to think about. Will you be prepared for the changes that are coming to public education in Ohio? Now, what is a Board of Education win? Again, strictly my opinion. Providing a quality education for every child in your district. You might measure that with graduation, but I think another important factor is what's their success after graduating? I know in Forest Hills, a lot of our graduates from high school go off to college and come back there to live. I did. I lived in the city of Cincinnati until my kids were old enough to go to school and moved right back to Forest Hills. And so the students that you educate here, that's your future. That's what the community is going to be built on. But part of that BOE win is educating children in a cost-effective way. And to me, part of that measure is the cost, is it at or below state average? Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
When I did the quick math, and I noticed, I know how many students in our school district, I know how much money we spend, and I saw yours, so I'm going to bet that you're at or below the state average on cost per student.
We are 1,700 under
Okay.
average cost per pupil.
Okay, well, that's a good place to be. Now, as I always say, there's always room for improvement.
Well,
And-
but with that, do you know all of the services that we're not providing for our youngest learners, like no art, music, and PE at the elementary level? So we're doing it at a cost
Okay,
to our students. So,
well, again,
And no busing.
what, no busing, but I'm talking about the educational
Pay
period, just the.
for play and
again, the burden is on you guys to come up with a plan. If you think that's in the best interest of your community to continue to do that, okay. But if not, you got to come up with a plan. And it almost certainly involves operating levy. But what's the sweet spot? Is there one? So anyway, and then the third thing, and I think is forgotten frequently, is the community support of your school district. I'd like to think in Forest Hills, we actually not like to think, we just did a survey, so I'm positive. We do have a overall positive impression of the work that our board does, our stewardship of the money that we receive, and people think in general that we're doing a pretty good job. And so to me, that's all part of the board winning. A minute ago, I said competing, for example, with other school districts. I know that's not the recommended way to think about it, but it's one of the ways I think about it because, like I said, Forest Hills is near and dear to my heart. I went to Anderson for 12 years. My kids went there. I want to see Forest Hills win, and that, to me, this is part of the winning.
I have a question regarding, you always referring to surveys and how you're a data-oriented individual. Do you have a line item budget in the budget that pays for the surveys themselves?
I'm not sure we actually have a line item, but there is a bucket of money that we use for that. Now, sometimes, one time, I'll just share with you, I got P&G to donate a survey to the Forest Hills School District for a particular issue. And so that was one way I got some really high-quality data that didn't cost the school district anything. You can't always count on that. Our last one, I think we actually did pay for. But there's, you could say, well, gosh, I'm spending all that money and I'm not doing anything for my students. Well, yeah, you are. It's all part of that learning, knowledge, whatever it's going to take for you guys to come up with a plan to work and win in your school district. So I think there's value in that. If you go out with a plan inadvertently that has no or very low community support, you're wasting your time. But if you've invested some amount of money to gather data, and I'm not saying data, this is one element of a much larger plan, and I'm spending a lot of time talking about that. It makes it sound like it's the end-all, be-all. It's not. It's just one piece of the bigger picture. But again, it's just happened because I come from a culture where we do a lot of that. There's no Nielsen's on, your high school here. But okay, like I said, I think I've talked about that more than it probably deserved. So with that, I appreciate your listening to me, and it's my experience, as I said at the very beginning. If you've got another board member in here, they might focus on some very different things, but that's been my experience. And if you've got any other questions, I'd be happy to try and take them. I think I kept to the exact amount of time you asked me to. And
As much time as you want.
okay. And with that, I'll say again, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Randy, I do have a comment. I would like to maintain a relationship with you, to learn more about how you guys are doing things over in Forest Hills and maybe bounce some ideas off of you, just to have an extension of us if you're our immediate neighbor. And we don't have a lot of experience on this board. I mean, I am the most senior member on the board, having only 2 years experience. So I don't have a wealth of information and knowledge to bring to the table. So I appreciate you taking time out to make yourself available, and would love to touch base with you in the future.
Be happy to. One of the things that I did when I was relatively new is attended board meetings of other school districts.
I do that.
Because different school districts do things very differently.
Yeah.
And you can pick up some ideas that different people do. Now, I know these folks talk with their peers, and that's really important because that's where a lot of the meat potatoes comes from. But still, on process and ways for you guys to operate, I'm not saying, I'm happy to talk with you.
Yeah.
But that's something, it's time consuming, but I found it valuable. There's a learning curve that will diminish over time when you do that. Sure. But it's just interesting to see how different boards operate and get some of their ideas.
Well, to a point that you made earlier, you have to have community support, and you have to figure out how to get that support if you're going to move the district forward. And you obviously, in that district, have mastered that. We have not been so successful at that.
Well, I wouldn't say we've mastered it, but go on.
Well, I mean, if you can
Work in
proudly
progress.
state that you have the support of your community, I can sit here and say, we have some support from our community. We need to figure out how to get that other portion of support. And I would love to figure out how you guys have mastered that.
One of the things that for example, I attend a lot of the OSBA training, the Capital Conference. That is huge. There's more information you can possibly absorb.
So OSBA is your source of information?
It's not my only source,
Okay.
but it's one of them. Again, I told you up front, I don't always agree with everything that they say, but, I mean, 610 out of 614 school districts in the state of Ohio are a member of OSBA. Like it or not, they are the voice of public education in Ohio. It's de facto. And so, again.
What other sources do you get your information from? I mean.
I get information from NSBA, but again, that's, federal stuff is.
Very broad.
Yeah, and OSBA has a number of different publications in different areas, and so I do rely on that. Again, you got to filter it a little bit.
Gotcha.
But we found that very valuable. And I
Okay.
understand you guys are members of OSBA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We are.
For us, that's almost a no-brainer because of the cost savings for some of the programs. Even if you're not taking advantage of the workman's comp, there are other things like, you know, we use board docs and get a discount there. And the bottom line is, even if you didn't use one service from OSBA, it's a net savings in dollars for your community, for your taxpayers. So again, I'm not trying to sell you on it, but it's just, I do use a lot of their services. And again, the Capitol Conference, that comes around in November. I'd highly recommend that because, especially for new people, because there's more information there than you can possibly absorb. There are different points of view. You're going to see some things that I don't always agree with. But you know, you can filter that out and determine what you agree with and what you don't.
Now, when you guys go to Capitol Conference, does your entire board go and then maybe you split up and then you get information, then you meet back and share? Or do you usually send one representative to gather the information and share with the others?
It depends on who's got the time to go do it. I think last November, I think 3 people went. The superintendent goes, treasurer went, just because there's so much new information that comes out that again, and there are other sources, and I just trying to think of, like I said, NSBA, but that's federal, and that's, to me, it's just too broad. It's too high up,
I find that as well.
too far away from, you know, the local. So, can you guys think of anything else that I'm forgetting when it comes to sources of information for board members that come across your desk?
You know, so much of it, I guess, comes from OSBA, and I was trying to think of what I used as other resources, but I use my own organization, OASBO, and of course Keith Bassa. I think one of the things that, and I depend a lot on OASBO, but one of the things that I find most valuable is their analysis of pending legislation. And that's, just to give us a heads up, I don't know how else we would know unless we took the time to actually log into the State House without that email arriving in your box to know what was pending out there. The other thing that the board belongs to is the educational, the Institute of, I'm going to say the words wrong, EPTI, the Tax Policy Institute, Education and Tax Policy Institute, that analyzes pending bills and their effect on taxes. And I use that as a big source of information as to how pending legislation would affect West Claremont. So I find that a valuable resource, and we do belong to that as well.
When I've gotten a heads up from whether it's OSBA or one of those groups, and it's an opinion I feel passionate about, I've gone to Columbus and testified to House and Senate committees on certain topics. And again, usually OSBA's point of view is kind of in the center, but if I believe strongly about a certain issue, and I say that from experience over time, I've seen that. And again, I consider myself conservative, but.
And that's strongly in favor of or strongly against, correct?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's unfunded mandates. I don't care where you're coming from. If you're on a board, the unfunded mandates will drive you nuts. And so whether you're over here or over here, we can all agree that unfunded mandates are almost always not a good thing. It's just unbelievable, the number of organizations that will go to the legislature, and they're passionate about some issue. And they want to, schools exist and the legislature oversees it, and they want us to carry the freight for them. That if we did every program that has been asked of the legislature, there would be no time for teaching. I mean, well, you'll find out as time goes by. You're going to ask.
Right. Well, OSBA is for Common Core, which will destroy education in the long run. But is there any need that we belong to OSBA when they belong to the OASBA and the superintendent's version of it?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Is there any reason why our school board needs to belong to OSBA when the superintendent and the treasurer belong to it?
Belong to our professional
Oh,
organization.
those are
That-
completely
That
different,
are,
different services and different support. Yeah, those, there might be some overlap, but it's minuscule. If the services that they provide are specific to board members, and are you talking about for OSBA? Yeah, the services they provide are designed for a Board of Education. Can you help me?
Yeah, a lot of, like, for example, the training opportunities that my organization would have would be, more to give you an example, and I was thinking earlier, and I'm digressing a little bit when Randy was talking about every time one school district in the state does something wrong, we get a new law. Well, a big example of that is investment training. 15 years ago, Cuyahoga County did something wrong. They didn't follow the current law. So as a result of that, every public finance officer in the state of Ohio has to take 7 hours worth of what they call CPIM training, it's investment training, every year to be able to invest district funds. OASBO, our training is more towards financial things, so it would be investment training, it would be training on different, I would get something from OASBO that tells me the recent workers' comp rebate, exactly how that is to be coded and what the state auditor is going to be looking for when he comes out to get our financial statements. And that's not something that board members would be needing to look for. OASBO will keep us apprised of what fund requirements are and what activities of the school district should be in what fund. There was recently a whole new expenditure ranking in the state of Ohio where they changed what groups of, for example, to give you an example, our instructional aides used to be coded to a 22 function. They changed that to a 12 function. So these are just kind of the technical things that we're going to talk about at OASBO for the school treasurers and business managers. And here I am talking, I'm forgetting that Mr. Waldman is also a member of OASBO and can be chiming in on the technical things that they do more towards business managers as well. But that's not really something.
They're very different organizations in terms of what they bring to the table. And in my opinion, you absolutely need both.
Well, and for my organization, BASA, it really gets down to the nitty-gritty of how are you going to make some of these things happen in the district and networking with fellow superintendents, those kinds of things. So each one of the organizations, I think, is targeted at a very specific entity, and all are meant to help move districts collectively forward. I may have different information around an issue than board members would get through OSBA, or Mrs. Cropper might get through OASBO.
Randy, do you have any thoughts, particularly in the case of having 3 brand-new board members and the other 2 members who have only been on the board for 2 years, about doing probably a more extensive board development to be able to go through a number of issues?
By board development, you mean like a training, or given your situation, I would probably, and the obvious answer is probably yes, simply because most of the time you've got people on a board who have some understanding and historical knowledge, and you basically have, what is it, 2 years, 4 years here? You know, it's an investment in time, but it would probably be worth it because you're kind of in a unique situation. But you guys kind of got to figure out how you want to tackle that. But
Well,
And as we, I'm sorry.
expanding on that thought, as I communicated earlier, that, while I was not officially on the board, I was doing a lot of interaction with the board, being on, serving on different leadership teams and, things like that for the last 11 years. So it's not like I don't know what's going on. I feel pretty.
Well, and what I would say is, and this is was intended to be a good starting point for that board development, boardmanship development, as Mr. Waldman had indicated. As we've set up these work sessions, special meeting work sessions, the intent really is to dive in depth into specific areas within the operation. So as an example, Saturday, we're going to dive into budget, so that we're, part of what we've got to do, and part of what's on us, is to educate folks around how school finances operate, where we are, where we have strengths, where we have weaknesses, those kinds of things. And so we're going to try to, during these work sessions, pick off specific topics, and that's where the prioritization exercise that looks like we're going to do Saturday too, will come into play, because we'll take a look at exactly what areas we want to focus on first. I know we've got a lot of issues that we need to share information about, and for some, our folks who are continuing on the board, some of that will be review, but as I said to the prior board, which we had a wide range of experience levels on the former board, we've got to get everybody to a level spot, so that we all have a basic understanding of how all of it works, and then we can set good goals from there and what we want to try to improve as we move down the road. So this really, tonight, was intended as a starting point, roles and responsibilities. Saturday, we'll talk about budget and do some priority setting. March, we're looking at curriculum and talking through that process and what instruction looks like. We'll continue to do that as we move forward. We could take a week-long retreat and do all that, but I think our heads would all probably explode doing all of that at one time. So we're going to schedule that out as we go. And of course, the priorities that you all set as a board, Saturday will be a part of slotting those things in as we move forward. That was the plan anyway.
Okay.
Randy, are you, in Forest Hills, are you moving towards Common Core?
Well, we don't really have a choice. We know that our students are going to be measured on that, and so we got a choice. We can ignore it, or we can not. And so, with given no choice, we're going to do what we have to do to get our students so that they can take the tests and pass them. I wouldn't say there's enthusiasm there, but it's reality.
Thank you.
Any other questions or?
And that's my opinion. I'm not speaking for the district or the superintendent or whatever. That's just kind of my
Understood.
take on where we are.
Understood.
Are we on a timetable, Dr. Klein, that we've got to be closing out this meeting, or?
Well, we were to try, the varsity game for Glen Estee Amelia is not tonight, but there are varsity, or Glen Estee Amelia games this evening, and so we'd like to try to get to some of that. That's obviously a big community event. We feel with 3 hours set on Saturday, we'll be able to accomplish both of the tasks that we've already discussed in adequate time. Of course, that's a board choice, but I think that we can cover all of that on Saturday.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Well, Randy, I personally would like to thank you for coming in and helping us get our head around what our roles and responsibilities are. I think everybody sitting up here, and certainly everybody in the audience, know and understand the magnitude of the work that gets done. And we certainly want to make sure we get off on a positive footing and move forward.
That was one thing it took. To do a good job, it took a lot more time than I ever imagined that I was going to be spending, and I chose to get involved in a lot of things. And but I mean, that's my choice. But it takes commitment, and you're either all in or you're not going to be effective. And so, good
Well,
luck.
when you're talking to talking about the 23rd largest district,
Yes,
23rd largest
23rd
district in the state of
largest.
Ohio, and the second largest employer in Claremont County. That's big stuff.
Yep,
There's a lot of work that has to be
a lot of
done.
responsibility.
Absolutely. Thank you again. I appreciate you coming in
Thank
and
you.
working with us tonight.
I was impressed. Nobody fell asleep in the audience.
Yeah.
People didn't walk out, so that was good.
Well, we had an opportunity to rest yesterday and about 2 hours this morning on a delay, so maybe we're feeling a little bit more refreshed. With that being said, I would like to, for the board to consider moving the rest of the agenda from tonight to Saturday. We'll start with, if it's all right with the board, we'll start with the budget conversation. We decided that budget was first to start with because everything else seems to tie back to that. So we want to make sure that we have a good understanding about that. And then we'll make sure that we leave time to go through and do some priorities as far as goals and where we want to head as a district. My guess is that we'll get those things surfaced, and I want to give then the board an opportunity to take that list. We'll type that list up and send it to all of you so that we have an opportunity before we actually prioritize for you to spend some time thinking about for you what the priorities are. So with that being said, I'll close superintendent comments tonight, and we'll defer that prioritization conversation to Saturday.
Okay. Dr. Coles, would you like to speak this time?
Sure. Well, I wanted to thank Randy also for the information and wanted to mention that I am the former school board president at Springboro Schools. I'm the president of the Ohio School Boards Leadership Council, and I agree with everything you said. It was great. I simply want to add a few things, and I wanted to remind board members that you did swear an oath, and that oath was to support the Constitution of the state of Ohio and support the Constitution of the United States. I'm sure you're aware of that. So that is what you swore to, and hopefully that's the first thing in your mind. How does that flow with the Constitution? I wanted to also remind you that you are at the top of the organizational chart. Now, not that that's to inflate anybody's ego, but that is to remind you that when things go wrong, you are to blame. So unless you're asking and getting to know the forecast inside and out, getting to know the policies inside and out, and the district processes, you are going to be blamed if they go wrong. So when somebody might call it micromanaging, I would call it asking questions and getting the information that you need. And I agree, you need to know the data. You need to know the data, because to make your arguments, we probably shouldn't keep using emotional arguments. We need to use information that's factual. And sometimes that can be manipulated inside and outside the district. Part of that manipulation, we did a survey, a community survey. I'm a researcher. So I was looking at the survey questions, which I agreed that I thought that was a good idea. We spent $8,000. And the survey was an absolute waste of time. I could have predicted the outcome before we did it. We could have saved $8,000 because I could have line itemed every single question and told you what % we were going to get. Because surveys can be written to give you whatever results you're looking for. And that's exactly what I found of our survey. They wanted to pass a levy, so the questions were led to the conclusion on that survey. And so I told the survey company repeatedly, I will not support and endorse this survey. So you can ask it. A couple of the things that we got were of value, and that's that 60% of our voters, which is true across the state of Ohio, do not have children in the district. So if you're trying to talk to people about a plan, those 60% are not really going to be that interested necessarily in the academics. They're going to be interested more in your financials. And they're going to want to know, how are you saving me money? As you probably know the history of Springboro, Springboro was projecting in their 5-year forecast a $30 million deficit. I came on the board, they put a levy on the ballot, although I disagreed with doing that. I didn't think we had made the changes that 60% at least had told us to make. They put it on anyway, costing us $10,000, $20,000 to do that. We failed it for the 5th time, but the point was, we weren't going through the forecast. We weren't following fiscal responsibility. We weren't doing things that were honest. Your forecast, if you say yes to your forecast, it's telling you what you're going to spend in the future. So if you say yes, that means you're okay with that spending, and that's how it's going to be perceived by both the negotiated unit and inside your district. And I said no to some forecasts. I wanted to say that Randy mentioned that you've got to approve a budget and approve contracts. And I want to add to that, you can disapprove them as well. Please go through them when you get them, and you should get them on board docs early. Go through them and ask these questions. Review, how does this benefit student learning? How does this benefit our students? How does this benefit our districts? And often what we were finding in our contracts were that they benefited the vendor far more than they benefited the district. And we absolutely insisted on language changes that then benefited the district. So Randy talked about one of your main coaches, and that's true. OSBA has been in business since 1955. They've been out there forever. I'd have to question if there are 72 unfunded mandates, how effective the lobbying has been. But anyway, we can go on. Represent a different organization, so I am another coach. I'm not necessarily the replacement coach. I'm another coach. OSBLC is made up of board members from across the state. We all felt we needed to get together, form a network, and start talking about what things should you be doing. When those contracts come to you, for example, that's one of many examples from what OSBLC does differently. We're inviting you to be a part of those decisions because you get blamed if something goes wrong. Okay, and then Neola, community surveys, waste of money, and Little Miami. Remember that Little Miami now is projecting a $19 million surplus, and they have a mass exodus. So they've got their money, but people don't want to live there. Thank you.
Time's up, thanks. Executive session, is anyone wishing to go into executive session at this time? Need a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
And a second? Mrs. Cropper, roll call.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Waldman,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes?
Mr. Merchant,
Yes.
Ms. Sanborn.
Yes.
For board members in the community, and just, I didn't slide this in here before we adjourned, but Saturday morning,
let's
same
get ready.
room, same location. We'll start at 9 o'clock and plan to be wrapped up no later than noon.
Right.
Coffee will be served.
Mr. Merchant, I'll bring you coffee, yes.
Coffee.
I will stop by Panera myself.
We have a lot to talk about.
Thank you for coming this evening. We look forward to seeing you on Saturday, February the 1st at 9 a.m. for our work session. Enjoy your evening.